December 7th, to order 6:31. And can we start with a roll call?
Hagfors?
Here.
Hoskew?
Here.
Baker?
Here.
Foster?
Here.
Raisin?
Here.
Akers?
Here.
And Pollica.
Here.
We did hear from, wait,
We're missing
Showalter?
Showalter and Azar.
we did hear from Showalter that he wouldn't be able to join us this evening. I'm not sure about.
I personally have not heard anything from Commissioner Azar.
Okay, she might just be a few minutes late, but
Would you like me to move to excuse both of them, and we'll just?
yeah, we'll start with that in case.
I would move to excuse Commissioners Showalter and Azar.
Second.
Gotcha. Yes, motion by Baker and a second by Hagfors. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is approved. On tonight's agenda, we have a new business item of a site plan approval for 1200 West 9 Mile Road. There she is. Commissioner Azar joined us at 6:32. Sorry. So we have the site plan approval for 1200 West 9 Mile Road and a discussion item of 915 East Drayton. Are there any edits or comments on the agenda?
I would move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Correct me.
That's a motion by Baker. I always do this too fast for writing. Motion by Baker and support from Commissioner Pollica or Councilman Pollica. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Tonight we have the consideration of the minutes from November 16th Planning Commission meeting. Do you have any edits or comments on those minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes from November 16th, 2022.
There we go. That is a motion from Commissioner Akers. Do you have
Raisin.
support?
Raisin.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Nope, you're okay.
Do I have support?
Support.
Support by Akers. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain due to absence.
Okay, you don't have to actually, but it's
Oh,
okay
really?
if you do because we have enough votes.
That's why I didn't motion it, because I wasn't here, but. Yeah.
If you read the minutes, you don't have to abstain, right, Chair?
Oh, okay, yeah, I support it.
All right. all in support. Motion for the minutes. Approval passes. Which brings us to agenda item number 4, our call to audience. For anyone in the audience who may want to speak on anything other than what's on our agenda for this evening. And I see no one for the call to audience, so we will move straight into new business, the consideration of site plan approval for 1200 West 9 Mile Road, a multi-family development. We'll begin with a presentation by our city staff, Kyle Bryce.
Good evening, Commissioners. Let's see here. So this probably looks a little bit familiar to you all. We did experience a site plan approval at this site at the May 18th, 2022 meeting. This is 1200 West 9 Mile. It's located just west of 9 and Pinecrest. You might know it as the site next to Savvy Sliders. It's an existing multiple family structure that's connected to an existing medical office. It's a very unique site. It has some very strange grading. The house sits up on a big hill, so it looks taller than it even really is. It is surrounded by, we have some multiple family to the west abutting the property. There's some multiple family across 9 Mile that you can't see in this picture, but it's there. There's also a church across the street. There are 4 single family houses that abut the site to the north. So when the Planning Commission approved this in May, it was a 44-unit, 4-story apartment building. This is in the mixed-use 2 zoning district, so that is permitted. They did get approved for a 5-spot parking waiver. So it got approved, and then a few months later, the applicant reached out and said they were looking at adding some units to the design. They stayed pretty close to 9 Mile with their original design, and the mixed-use zoning district does allow for some pretty generous setbacks. So they do have some space to work with. Keep also in mind that there's no residential density requirements in this zoning district either. So multiple family and upper level residential are both permitted here outright. So we do have the site. Here's a nice little rendering. I think overall it is pretty similar to what we looked at and what was approved in May. I can go through the differences. Here's some nice isometrics of the site. So if you recall, the approved design was a rectangular building that fronted on 9 Mile. What they've done is they have added these 2 wings off the back. These are on a podium, so they have no first floor. So what this has done is it's allowed for 10 more units at the site, or I think 12 more units. But they've also added more parking on site. So they've actually reduced their parking waiver because they've been able to put more underneath the building.
Kyle, I'm sorry to interrupt, but so I just want to clarify to make sure we have full understanding. So previously we had approved a 5 parking space waiver. Tonight on the agenda is the recommendation to approve 1 parking space. Would that be in addition to the 5 or a reduction from 5 to 1?
So
And I apologize,
it's not
I'm
in
getting ahead of
addition.
you.
It's not in addition to the 5.
Okay.
So they're only on the hook for 1 space that they're deficient for. I put together this slide. I thought it might be helpful to see the comparisons. So they are keeping the 6-foot offset from 9 Mile. If you recall, they approached us in April for approval, and there was some concern about the building being at the 0-foot lot line, which is where it originally was. The applicant was generous enough to push it back by 6 feet, just for a little bit more breathing room on the sidewalk. They were able to add some landscaping and some trees in that 6-foot area as well. So they've kept that. The original design was on the west property line. So that caused them to utilize CMU for fire rating purposes. So we had a big discussion about CMU. We did approve it. They provided a particularly nice version of CMU. But this is not on the west property line anymore. So we don't have to go through the CMU approval. Distance from the north property line. So the May approval was about 84 feet from that north line. This one today, it is quite a bit closer. The 2 portions of the U that stick out, those are about 40 feet from that property line. That's still it's over double the ordinance requirement of 20. They've kept the same height. The units has increased by 10, not 12. I think I misspoke earlier. The bedrooms have also increased by 10. And the parking requirement has gone up to 59. They provided 58 on site. So they're seeking a waiver of 1 space.
As we're comparing those two, I apologize, but and again, if you're going to get to this, feel free to answer it later. But there's also our fence requirement is for a masonry wall, although the council does have the ability to modify or waive those requirements. I believe that there was some discussion at the last meeting. Can you talk about the difference between then and now?
Yeah, there was some, I guess, flip-flopping, you could call it, from the original go-around. I think they had proposed a 3-foot masonry wall, which is actually deficient. So it did go up to 5. Then I think there was some discussion up here because of the neighbors. There was a feeling that perhaps we should do something a little more friendly, not so harsh, like a masonry wall. So I think we opted to go with a vinyl, or at least that was discussed and the applicant agreed to it. So I believe that was what was approved on the original plan. After that meeting, we had 2 different residents come. They were the neighbors to the north, and they both spoke that they wanted a masonry wall because they saw that as more soundproof, I would presume. They also brought up that they wanted the wall to be higher, which our ordinance does allow you to go up to 8 feet. They cited specifically that the grade kind of slopes down between the two, and so they felt that a 5-foot wall may not be as adequate. But I do believe this site will be regraded, so I don't know if that's going to be necessarily as big of a problem, but it is something to consider. The residents also spoke about balconies on the north side, which I can point that out in a little bit. And I think one spoke about the transformer screening at the northwest corner of the site. Here's a side-by-side. This is probably a good view of it. So on the left, you have the May approval, and on the right, you have what's before you tonight. So you can see the building. The first floor has shrunk a little bit, which allows them to put in this row of parking. This shaded area is the new 2nd through 4th floors overhead. So it's a pretty similar design. It's got a 2-way drive on the right. You can swoop in and circle around. A little bit of grass here in the parking lot and center areas. You can see on this west side here, there's actually a parking, or a sidewalk rather. So it's not on the west property line anymore. Here's a closer up view. They do have some Juliet balconies up on the upper floors. The only real balconies are on the front facing 9 Mile and 3 on this inner area here. So I think you could say that 1 is facing the north. It is the furthest one away. So they don't have any on these feet out here, or whatever you'd like to call it. So we do have the 3. That's what these little shaded boxes are. But again, it's a pretty similar design. They have the interior bike storage, some exterior EV parking, ADA parking. We have the same loading zone in the right-of-way as last time around, and they are opting to paint the 5 spaces in the right-of-way in front of the building. I think just like last time around, in terms of landscaping, they've been able to provide the greenbelt screening, or the greenbelt trees, the parking lot trees. Not a whole lot of screening they need to do here because the building is doing that. Like last time around, we got the lobby, we have the refuse room, we do have our 2 bedrooms / live work spaces, and the upper floors are all studios and 1-bedrooms. We have a few micro units also. I'll let the applicant talk about that. And then the building, it's a pretty similar design. We have cast stone, some masonry, a few wood accents, and metal paneling at the top. And that's pretty much all the way around. You can see the west side is matching the building, and it's not a big CME wall like last time around. I think that's all I have. Jason or Mike, if you want to come up, say a few words.
Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for bringing your project back. It looks like you incorporated some of the comments we've made at our previous discussions. Thank you for that.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming here tonight. I'm Mike Ferlito, the developer of the project. Just a couple quick points. We increased the wall height to 8 feet to appease the neighbors, and we got rid of the north balconies. We didn't think the one that's on the middle is too cumbersome, but if it is, we can get rid of it. Really, there hasn't been much material change. We did get rid of the big CMU block wall, kept the vegetation up front. We really didn't change much other than just adding those wings and adding actually more parking. So I think there was one more question or one more change that Kyle noted that I wanted to talk about, but I can't remember it. Fatherhood brain, as they call it, I guess. So yeah, it's the same project. We went from 44 units to 56 units, add a little more density, and I I really don't have much. I'm not really good at this. So.
You're great, thanks, Mike.
Jason Krieger, Clear Architects, we did a real quick fly around the building just to show the podium construction and stuff like that. We'll do that really quick. Kyle did a great job as usual, so we don't need to be redundant and regurgitate a bunch of information that he already shared, so. We'll just pop this up really quick. We'll run through it, and then we're available for questions. Like I said, Kyle did a great job explaining the project. The one thing, I think the big plus here, obviously, is along the west. That was a big topic. And obviously, now it matches. The building's a four-sided building all the way around, so the same materials. So the block is gone, and it's cast stone instead of the block. This thing says, is it opening? There it goes. So, again, I think Kyle touched on all of these items, the parameters of the project. The site's basically the same, except for now the podium goes over the back. The rest of the function of the site is identical to what we've already approved. The building's still pushed back, like what was requested last time, in May, I believe it was. And high-quality materials, we brought the material board back in, we removed the block, and we added the cast stone. This right here, you guys have seen this you guys already saw this. It's a podium building. To the left is the rear, where it's basically on stilts, is what that means. And then here's some renderings of the building. This right here is, it's literally 30 seconds just to show you. So this just sometimes paints a better picture. Parking falls. And so we agreed to last time. Final was to I think it was that right there. So we're available for questions.
I mean, you could turn the sound off and put it on a loop if you want.
I don't know how to do that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That is really helpful with the massing and especially showing how it relates to the adjacent properties. So thank you. So one clarification. So I think it was a little bit loud with the music. So Mike had said 8-foot wall, but I think you clarified that on the east side we have a wrought iron fence, and then on the rear it's 8-foot vinyl. Is that correct?
Yeah. So as my memory serves, we agreed to a vinyl. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, aluminum fence.
I'm sorry, aluminum. Yeah, correct. Aluminum fence on the east, and that was in conjunction with the church.
Yeah.
And then, if I remember right, we had a vinyl. I think it was 6 on the north and on the west.
Yeah, and I did. We did communicate with the call them priests. I keep forgetting, but we did. I did have a conversation. Pastors, thank you. We did communicate. Had a good conversation with them, and they definitely enjoyed the option of aluminum fence. And the one thing I did forget to mention, we do now have full screening for the transformer
Great.
with landscape.
Thank you. It looks like the I'm kind of forgetting what the circulation, I remember having a bit of a conversation. It looks like the circulation might work better now, unless I'm forgetting it's the same.
Honestly, it's the same as what it
Oh,
was
okay.
once before. I wish I could say
I thought I remembered there being like a loading zone or something in the back, in the rear of the building.
We got rid of the loading zone in the back because we put the
Maybe that was
building
one of the
back.
original, okay.
So now the loading zone, we're using the spaces allotted in the front for loading zone and Lyft, Uber, pickup, and then the 4 or 5 spaces.
All right. All right, well, with that, I will open it up to the commission with any comments or questions for the applicant.
Through the chair, On the west side, the fence there, how far south does it run?
I believe it was.
I had to look at the rendering, but I didn't quite catch it.
It will go all the way to the corner of the property line and back. Those three corners, those three sides will be fully fenced in.
Got it, because I think the intent was to shield the adjacent property from lights, but I'm wondering if it does go to the sidewalk, that it might create a little bit of visibility if a car is pulling in or out of the adjacent one from someone on the sidewalk. So maybe if the thought were, how long does it actually need to be on that side?
Yeah, what I think we would want to do is verify the vision triangle, which is what I think you're mentioning, and 100%. Usually what happens, and I gotta be honest, I don't remember exactly what I brought that to, but would follow the vision triangle established by the city, and then it would likely go from 5 feet down to 3 at some point, and then it would stop so that we maintain our, work with staff on that to make sure that it's safe.
Anything else, Commissioner Azar?
Just a question, I think the numbers are in here, but could you walk us through your open space and how much of it is continuous and how did you reach the requirement? Because it just would help me visualize how that was met.
Do you have open space requirement in MX?
But they do have 15%.
Oh, I missed that.
So they do have the, primarily utilizing the front area up here, and then we do have, I think they're calling out these areas up here. They're also utilizing the balconies for that, because you can use quite a bit for the balconies. So I think that's why they're a little bit over the requirements, just because they can take 80% of that number with all the balconies, which, I mean, there's quite a lot on this building, right?
Have an open area?
Yes.
The balconies, sorry, are incorporated into that open space, is that what you just said?
Yeah. Yeah, the ordinance allows you to use 80% of whatever the required number is. That can be utilized by the balconies.
Uh-huh. Does it incorporate the rooftop patio? No, just the balconies and the outdoor?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
So with the rooftop patio, there's even more, I guess is what I was,
You allowed to incorporate the rooftop?
that was actually the next question. Was can they have a rooftop patio? It's in the plans, roof deck, and it was in the fly-through, so that's why I just wanted to ask that.
We do have a rooftop.
Okay, that on the 9 Mile side, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so, okay. I don't
Like
think
a-
there's a problem with it.
And that's new,
We don't
right?
normally see it in
That was
MX, but it
new.
was new,
Okay.
yeah. So that even increases the private open space.
Correct.
Oh, I thought I just saw utility, or mechanical equipment on the rooftop. That was actually,
It's to the north of the activated rooftop. So on the
Along that
screen,
line.
to the bottom, that's the south, that's along 9 Mile. That'd be the activated rooftop. Behind that's where we would have some.
gotcha, thank you.
The
No, the screen
4,500
for the
square feet.
ordinance.
And not specific to this site plan, but just a comment for when we're looking at zoning is, we're always counting slivers of grass instead of like actual relaxed in the grass green areas. So just when we're, maybe we consider, lines and how might we word that.
Yeah, good point, thank you. So related to the open space, I just had a question for you on the balconies. And I know that we had some comments from the public in the past, and I think there was a discussion item previously. I'm guessing that's why you removed the balconies on the north wall, on the furthest north. Curious from like a marketing standpoint, how do residents typically like to have, like do they prefer the balconies?
Some people prefer them, some people never use them.
Okay.
Developing a project just down the street on 9 Mile in Oak Park. You guys actually see it's actually up now with brick on it. No balconies. We're doing one in Midtown, no balconies. It's about preference.
So it's not an issue for you on this location? Thank you.
That's another reason why we put the roof deck in. If you want your outdoor space, hop up there, have your coffee, walk your dog.
Thank you.
Through the chair, oh, sorry, go ahead,
Go ahead.
Jay.
No, I just have
Like-
a question on the roof deck, so we can come back.
Okay, well, I just actually want to know, like, and this is a question for Kyle, because we got a lot of feedback from the neighbors post-approval of the last iteration of this. Were they informed that this was coming back with the addition that's 40 feet closer to the homes on the north side, or?
No, I mean, ultimately, we just followed our normal protocols for this, for the standard site plan approval. I do know one of those residents has moved, I'm pretty sure, anecdotally. But no, we just did our normal standard protocol.
But to verify, we didn't notice it the last meeting, time either.
No, yeah,
So it's not
exactly,
about-
yeah, and that was just kind of my question, and mainly it was, I know we're following the ordinance, but it was interesting that this project came up in like 2 or 3 meetings following the approval of people that had concerns, and so from the public perspective, now that we're talking about, you know, yes, the balconies are gone, which is great, I think they were concerned about the balconies, and now they're maybe concerned about a building 40 feet closer to their home now than it was before, so that was the only reason why I inquired about it, but again, following what the ordinance is, so, thanks.
You were gonna go.
Oh, I had a quick question, too, about the rooftop patio. It doesn't look like there are any structures planned for up there, so I was just wondering, because you're already at the maximum height, are there gonna be any, like, pergolas or things that kind of go above the 45 feet, or is it mostly, you know, furniture that gets removed at the end of the season? Planned for up there?
It'd be furniture that would be removed. We're making sure that we're falling within the ordinance.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the ordinance does permit some projections into the height limit. It has to stay under a certain
Screening.
threshold of the percentage of the rooftop area. So things like stairwells and
Yep.
parapets are all part of that.
Thank you. And I wanted to double check about the grading, because I admittedly am not good at reading grading plans. That's one of my own projects that I'm not good at reading grading plans. So could you guys talk to me a little bit about that site? Obviously, there's a big hill there that's going away. But when it comes to the interaction with the houses to the north of you, are you higher, lower? How are you draining? How is your grading interacting?
Do we have a grading plan in our packet?
There were some details in one of the site sheets that I could see like half of numbers. Sheet was it? C4?
No.
I just know I'm not good at reading numbers.
That's existing grading, no? Do we have projected grading in the packet?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it right now. I think bottom of curb is at 672.
C4.
Look for your building,
Oh, sorry, is this
saying 670, so it seems like it's raised up. You have to remember that we have to capture all the water on site.
Right, that's why I wanted to ask, because that was my reaction when the neighbor mentioned it. I thought, my gosh, you guys have to comply with stormwater, so how does it relate? So, okay, so I see 672,
Well, basically, as I'm looking
673.
on the north, roughly, a foot and a half, 2 feet higher than the building.
So on the north lot line, I'm seeing anything from 673.5 to 672, and you're at 672, so you're either flat or the backyards are a little bit higher than you?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah. I would expect it to kind of bowl in, so that because we can't let any water leave the site, so I would expect it to come in and we're managing it. So, if we're doing a 6-foot fence, it'd be a true 6-foot fence. 5 feet.
Thank you, that's helpful. It looks like it slopes down as you go toward the church. So now, as you kind of go toward the east, I'm seeing 670s behind you, but I'm also, I think, seeing 670s interior to your site. I just want to triple check,
Yes.
because then I'm seeing 672s.
That's correct. I mean, across the site, you're gonna see anywhere from a foot difference, but if you're staying on the site, it's gonna look pretty much flat. It's just it's just pitching enough to manage it. Oops. Along the property lines to the east and the west, it looks like it's pretty much following some of the grades that are existing.
Thank you. It was a surprise to me when someone came to public comment and mentioned that, because I thought, my gosh, did I miss something, or did our engineer miss something, or, but thank you for walking us through that.
Maybe perceived that way.
Yeah.
We're gonna get regraded.
Yeah, we're gonna be pulling a lot of dirt off of the site.
Sorry,
If you guys
that
need some
was,
dirt, let us know.
and that was 1.5 to 2 feet from the rear fence to the 9-mile curb or to the building itself?
I was actually looking at the building itself.
Okay, so it's a 1.5 over approximately 80 feet?
Oh, it's the same. It's 1.5 to 2 feet from 9 Mile to the back, to the north property line. Oh,
Okay, so 2 feet across that whole 120 feet-ish
yes.
depth. Okay, that makes more sense to me.
I guess my last question is kind of to the commission, and it's about that north wall. So we approved, I think, 5-foot vinyl. We've now got 8-foot vinyl. Neighbors asked for masonry rather than vinyl. Are we more comfortable staying with the standard that we had approved? Actually, it's a little better than the standard we approved, because now it's the 8 feet. Or do we want to ask the applicant for the masonry screen wall, which is technically the requirement, but we obviously do have latitude to change that. I didn't know if anyone felt strongly about it. I just want to make sure we resolve that point about the material.
Through the chair, do we remember what the wall is for, what's the project down here at,
409?
yes, thank you. What's the wall along Fester there?
I don't remember. It hits an alley.
It's an alley, so I don't think there is a
There's
wall.
not a wall, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's an alley that runs behind.
Yeah, it's open because people can actually access that parking from the alley.
Gotcha, okay.
Oh, no, they can't because it's gated. You can see it.
We had requests related to the project at Vassar next to 9 Mile, where we would request that neighbors wanted vinyl fences, and then on this one, we thought, oh, well, we've just had these requests
Yeah.
where people wanted it to look residential, and then we had neighbors come in and say, why can't I have a brick wall? Because we thought we were being helpful.
Can't win.
No.
I remember when we did the flats at Iron Ridge a couple of years ago, and everybody wanted the vinyl. They
Yeah,
wanted the vinyl.
precisely.
We don't want to look at masonry. It's just, I laugh because it's
Precisely. So I just wanted to put a point on that one. It says in my packet that it is. Okay, I mean, the 8-foot vinyl is complying with the intent of our first approval, and then the height that was requested from the neighbors. It's fine with me, I just wanted to make sure we resolved that question about materials. Okay, what's my last question?
8-foot vinyl?
Just tall fence.
Anything else? Any other questions? Or?
Yes, through the chair. Couple questions. You have 2,000 square feet for the lobby. Can you refresh my memory of why you need that much space for a lobby? And why maybe some of that isn't utilized for retail space?
So it's like an amenity for the building, so we're gonna put a little fitness center in there and like a co-working space.
Oh, okay,
Packages, smell.
that alone.
Okay.
is 1,000 square feet.
okay. All it showed was, this open space of 2,000 square feet. I'm like, that's a lot of just open space. So, okay.
Mike doesn't want any rent, don't worry.
The rooftop, what is your hope for the use of the rooftop?
So it's literally just a table, chairs, and laying out chairs. Have you guys been to She-Wolf, the restaurant downtown, in Midtown? We developed that building, put a rooftop on it. The only thing we put on there was 4 laying chairs and a table for people to eat. That's it.
Okay, because I know that 409, they rent that space out for parties and have activities like that. And that doesn't bother me because it faces 9 Mile.
Yep.
And there's the building behind it because it's actually on the second floor, not the top floor. My concern, it would be a lot, because this is more into the residential area right behind, that wall that protects it, how tall is that wall? If people are going to have, loud playing music or, having groups of people up there, it gets loud. I'd hate for that to travel over to the north. So
I don't
what's,
think it's, well, we can manage that through just operating and property management, but there's no intent to rent it out for parties. We don't- Quite frankly, I don't think we have enough people here. We only have 56 units compared to, I think 409's 150 or 200 people. It's different management and
yeah.
like the
They might want to have a building party, you know, potluck or something. I
yeah,
don't
but
know.
we can control those with noise ordinance rules, you know, no loud noises after 10, or balconies closed, or rooftops closed at 10. There's a lot of different measures in place. We can actually lock the doors where they can't even get up there past 10
Okay.
with auto lock, so there's a lot of different things we can do.
Okay. How tall is that wall, though, to the north that would block, because all your utilities are up there? Is that a 6-foot wall, an 8-foot wall?
They're typically 8 feet.
8 feet, okay. And then the last question is pet space. Where do you intend the pets to do their business?
So, in most of our projects, we put dog runs up on the rooftops.
Okay.
So there'll be a little dog run up there, like AfroTurf and little garbage bags, and then drainage that run right into the roof drain.
Okay. So yeah, really not a very big party space. People are bringing their
No.
pets up there.
Dog parties.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else for the applicant?
My only other question is, if you have dad brain, does that mean baby number 2 has arrived?
Within a week.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, well, there are 2 proposed motions in our packet, one for the parking and one for the site plan. If there are no further comments or questions for our applicant,
Kyle did mention micro units, and that you guys would explain what those were. It's more of a curiosity than I think anything that will sway a decision.
Yeah, through just doing urban development in the city, Ferndale Park, there's been an interested market for micro units where they have a Murphy bed. They come in, they come out. They tend to be a lot cheaper. So we decided to put some in this project and see how they fare. We have 3 in our project in Midtown, or I'm sorry, 5. And the property managers there are very, very excited about it. So it's just, you know, most likely for just a single user, super young, that wants a really great place to live. It's just a different unit typology.
Sure.
That's becoming more and more popular.
Cool, thank you.
I would move in the matter of 1200 West 9 Mile that the Planning Commission approve the parking reduction request for 1 off-street parking space based on plans dated December 1st, 2022, with the findings as listed in the packet.
Support.
that is a motion by Commissioner Baker and support by, was that Azar?
Through the chair. Sorry, I just noticed on page, what is this? Page 4 of the staff report. It talks about the trees and the under landscaping and screening. It actually says that the proposed 5-foot vinyl, that it's being proposed as a 5-foot vinyl screen wall.
The site plan showed an 8-foot, so I guess I didn't bother to correct on the north side, I'm sorry, on the north side it showed an 8-foot with the 5-foot on the west side.
Okay.
And then the aluminum on the east.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're clear on, because like I said, under the section of landscaping and screening, it shows a 5-foot proposed vinyl screen wall, so.
And maybe we can clarify that in the site plan motion. We're currently actually discussing a motion for parking now.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's a good point, so thanks for bringing it up. Just to make sure that's clarified. So I do have a motion by Commissioner Baker, and that was seconded by Azar on the reduction or waiver of 1 parking unit. Any further discussion? I have a roll call vote on that. Mr. Bryce?
Commissioner Akers,
Yes.
Commissioner Brazen,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Azar,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoskew? Oh, you're recused, sorry. Commissioner Hagfors?
Yes.
Councilman Polika?
Yes.
And Chair Foster?
Yes. Motion passed. Thank you.
I can make the site plan motion, and then we can talk about that condition? Okay. I would move in the matter of 1200 West 9 Mile, that the Planning Commission approve the site plan based on plans dated December 1st, 2022, with the following findings and subject to the following conditions, as listed in the packet, with the addition of condition number 6, which is a clarification that there's an 8-foot vinyl fence on the north side of the property, a 5-foot vinyl fence on the west side, and I don't remember the height, decorative aluminum fence on the east side.
I think it's 5 foot.
3 or 5? 5-foot decorative aluminum fence on the east side. Is that
Yes.
cover? Okay.
Excellent. Could not have said it better myself.
Do you want to second my motion then?
I tried. Oh, yeah, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. That is motion by Baker, seconded by Polika. I would just like to say that I appreciate the clarification of the fencing, especially since we are waiving or modifying the requirements as provided in our zoning ordinance, so thank you. And just as a admin note, in the future, could you maybe put in the findings if we are modifying a requirement such as this or like building materials? Thank you. We'll typically catch up, but I appreciate that. Any other discussion on the motion?
Would you like me to add a finding number 4, or did the condition?
No, I think the condition covers it. Yeah, thank you. Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote on the motion, please?
Commissioner Azar?
Yes.
Commissioner Baker?
Yes.
Commissioner Brazen?
Yes.
Commissioner Akers?
Yes.
Councilman Polika?
Yes.
Commissioner Hagfors?
Yes.
And Chair Foster?
Yes. Thank you. Motion is approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Nice to see you back.
Everybody have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda, we have a discussion item of 915 East Drayton, a mixed-use development. We can begin with a presentation by city staff. Thank you, Kyle. And while you're getting that set up, I will just remind everyone that we received an email from Kyle prior to the meeting with some updated plans and information from the applicant to further aid our discussion this evening. And we do have paper copies if anyone would like to receive those right now. All right, thank you. Kyle?
Okay, so this is located at 915 East Drayton. This is in our northern of the two industrial districts. It's zone M1, light industrial. This might look a little familiar. I think back in March, maybe it was February, but probably March, we had a discussion item about this building. It was most formerly Ferndale Electric, so it was an electrical contractor. So they did have some contracting space, 2 storage buildings, and some, accessory office space. The discussion item back in March was for a food hall concept. So it had, it did incorporate some of the catering that I'm going to talk about in a minute, but it also had a lot of different vendors, people cooking on site. It's almost like a bunch of mini restaurants in one space. So there was a lot of discussion with the Planning Commission and concerns about that. It was tricky to fit that within our ordinance. Light industrial does permit a lot of traditionally non-industrial uses, but usually there's some kind of caveat that has to be capped at a certain amount of square footage, things like that. There's also a big concern about how it was a community space and this is in the middle of the industrial district and not a lot of great and safe walkable ways to get there. I think those were like the 2 biggest takeaways from that meeting. So the applicant is here. I think he heard you loud and clear. So they've come back with a revised plan for the site. I'll zoom in here. So we have the site here. It's pretty similar to the existing layout out there. I think they're planning to take some changes to kind of de-industrialize the site a little bit. I think they want to remove some of the barbed wire. They want to add some more parking, make it a little more friendly. They're going to add some landscaping. In short, the 2 storage buildings at this time are proposed to stay as storage. And then as for the interior, they are proposing 2 main concepts. The first is a catering business. So primarily it's going to be the sushi production. I don't want to steal their thunder, so I'll let them get into that. But it's a sushi catering business along with an upstairs corporate office with some R&D test kitchen and a training room. So really, if you're looking at this, the western half of the building, both the first floor and the second, would be utilized by this catering business, which is permitted by right in this zoning district. The right-hand side, they're proposing a banquet space. So we do have a few different rooms here. So we do have a pre-function space with a bar and an elevator. We do have the main banquet space with a stage. And if you look at the bottom, you can see some stairs, which do go up to a mezzanine, which is only in the northwest or the northeast corner of the building. There's some more emergency stairs too. That'd be the northwest corner of the building, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. So that's where we stand with that. The banquet does require a special land use. There's no specific conditions with the banquet, but I thought it would be a really important subject for the Planning Commission to review, that special land use, the location, how they're going to handle the guests, how they're going to handle parking, everything related to that. I think the feedback's going to be very helpful in enhancing the site plan to make it better for everybody. So I do have some discussion points. I just want to kind of put them in your minds so you can think about them, and then I'll let the applicant come up and speak and tell you their story, their plans. The big points for me are the special land use component, how we can make that better in terms of noise and light, the impact on the surrounding area, if there really is any kind of hours of operation, especially for how late they're going to go at night. And also the parking situation. My second point is parking entirely. It's pretty complex with the occupancy. I don't want to jump into it right away. I'll let them talk first. But there's a lot to say about the parking. And then the third is any kind of like sidewalks or walkability, any ways we can improve the site. And that also relates to parking. The last is a driveway. So they're proposing a new driveway down here. Currently, this little parking lot does exist, but this is completely curbed up. They do have this parking or this driveway into the main building here, and they are proposing to keep that so that they can utilize it in their building directly. So they do have this central vehicle circulation corridor here, which I would presume would be for the catering, but I can let them speak to that. So just ponder that, and I'll invite the applicant up here to do a run-through.
Thank you.
Jason Krieger.
Yeah, Patrick Van Len. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks for having us back as a discussion. We really appreciate it. I got to be honest, I think most of this is going to be Patrick presenting what exactly the proposal is. We do have a couple of renderings we just want to share with you guys. How do I get to that? Kyle walked you through the proposal. Really, the idea is to maximize the parking on site. Currently, I think we get to about 60 parking spaces. And then with regards to the assembly space, Patrick's going to talk about. Is this the right one? I think so. Let's see. There you go. So our office did some conceptual renderings with Patrick and Tom, the owners and operators. So you can see that, this would be some little versions of the event space. This right here is the main area that's on the northeast side of that building. And then we're looking at potentially activating, this is the north side of the building with some kind of patio space. And again, we would have to work through the planning commission and staff to talk about noise levels and light levels and things like that. So there is a nice vision to create a really wonderful adaptive reuse. This purple area was that large 2-story volume. And then the first image I showed you with the bar is this blue area underneath the mezzanine. And one thing I just want to point out is that these existing buildings here, the storage building on the northeast and then the storage building on the southeast, the plan right now is to just leave those vacant for right now. We're really focusing on the main building, which is the large building on site. Patrick, why don't you run through some of the operations and everything else?
Absolutely. And first, let me say, our first visit here, you guys gave us a handful, and thank you. It actually helped us really to get a better understanding and really think about what we want to building. And we are much more confident in where we're at now and the direction we want to go, not only because it's great for the area, from a business model, it fits better for us. And if I can just digress for a second and tell you a little bit about our core business and how or why we think this is going to be a good direction. Our core business is Sushi Kabar. It's fresh sushi programs for grocery stores, hospitals, universities, and some large corporate environments. In fact, if you go to Western Market over here, and if you get sushi from them, that's ours, or Holiday Market in Royal, same. We've got about 220 locations in 15 states, and then here locally, we've really worked to expand what we do from a catering perspective. And that's kind of the driver behind why this makes sense and why we want to have a rentable space or a rentable venue in the back. Last year, our catering took off. We did a ton of business, and we're starting to realize as we're catering weddings in particular that because of COVID and the backlog for what's there, or for people looking to have weddings in different places, it's very hard to find. In fact, a space where someone, 200, 220 people, finding a space within 12 to 18 months is almost impossible. So we know the need was there, and because we're already catering a lot of these things, well, we've got a perfect building for this. I think it'll be beautiful, great for the city. Not that we don't want people going to Detroit, but we'd rather keep them here, close, right? Keep them from going downtown. And like I said, a fantastic building, fantastic community, and what a great mix of what we already do with the building that we have. So that was the background for this. And once again, thank you for dissuading us from trying to push forward with a food hall. I think that would have been difficult for many, many reasons, but we think this is going to be something that works.
Yeah.
Parking. From a parking perspective, thank you. Jason was saying we've got about, I think, 59 spots on premises. We've developed relationships with our neighbors right across Drayton, and we're going to set up a relationship with them. That would be Paradigm.
Paradigm Plumbing? I wondered.
Behind Paradigm is the photographers. They have 2 back-to-back parking lots. They both agreed, and we'll work out the details as far as what the contracts need to look like, but agreed that they don't use those spaces when we would, which would be evening events for us. That should give us another 50 spaces there, and then Star Tracks, which is around the corner, they do party planning and valet service. They have another, we're thinking 30 to 40 spots there. We're going to contract with them and make valet mandatory at our location so people aren't walking around trying to find parking spots. It's a complimentary service that we'll provide for folks that rent our venue, and then we'll be able to utilize our parking and those 3 lots, which are all within 500 feet of the building, and have lit and, sidewalks for the valet folks to utilize. And it's pretty well lit as well. So we feel it's a safe way for us to manage parking, the number of spaces we would need without having to worry about foot traffic.
Thank you. And sorry, just to follow up on that. So for the parking, if for the events, the valet is mandatory. We still have 50 spaces, and of course you can use those spaces for the valet. But then, like during the day, what would the parking look like for your distribution business?
We're not going to do daytime events, and we've got 10 people in the office every day. When we do trainings, at max, that would be 10 to 15 people there. So really 25, if everyone drove separately, 25 cars, which we can easily handle right on site.
Okay.
I just wanted to add, we don't need to go through them all, but there are a number of letters of support to the neighbors, Patrick been around. Like it's something that would be well received in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Of course.
I appreciate it. Stick around, I'm sure we'll have questions. So just generally, and I'm sure we discussed this at our last meeting just about the industrial district and special land use. I just want to say that it's really great to see kind of like a mix of what's kind of the intent of the district of that industrial nature. I think that the special land use is certainly going more to that commercial side, that we have had many discussions at the planning commission and during our master planning process about really wanting to maintain the industrial district for what it is, not only due to some of the infrastructure limitations, like you mentioned, there's some pedestrian kind of concerns and whatnot in the area, as well as some other infrastructure, but then also just because of the market, and there's only so much buildable space that we have in Ferndale and so much industrial, and so that wanting to maintain the district. So I like the mix that you're providing here, just a general comment, but I want to let you know that we have had many discussions, and not just on your project, but others as well, about really wanting to kind of maintain that district, and it's part of our master plan update as well. So,
appreciate that.
So in terms of the use, I don't know if that's where we want to start the conversation, or whoever wants to kick us off.
I've got questions about the use. So we have one use that's permitted, one that's special land use, and potentially one that's coming, maybe possibly additional special land use in the future with the carryout restaurant, but that's not on the table for right now. That's like down the road. Okay.
That's most likely never going to come to fruition.
No, don't ever say no. I mean, that's not, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just wanted to make sure.
Handle right now.
Talking about the main building. Okay. And what it looked like on the site plan, because right now there's like boulders to kind of keep you from driving onto the side and that sort of, but no sidewalks on that side of Burdette. On the other side of Burdette in particular, Drayton's a little tougher, but on the other side of Burdette, there are sidewalks, I believe going all the way up to Woodward Heights. So I wondered if you would talk to us about the decision to pull the parking. It looks like you maybe pulled the parking closer to the street, or why there aren't sidewalks on the site plan.
We have not adjusted the parking lots at all.
Oh, okay,
So,
okay.
On actually both streets, but particularly on Drayton, there actually is a little.
Drayton's tough.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a strip of sidewalk there.
Yeah.
But if we want to achieve, we went with the trees in the parking, then I think it'd be impossible with that.
Okay. What about on Burdette? I don't know where city easements are, and I don't know if that has anything to do with where the sidewalks are.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So there are a lot of utilities in the area. For instance, there is a fire hydrant like right, I don't know if you can all see this, or
Yeah, I was
Like, I don't know if
just
this is
doing
better.
a
So
Google
there
Earth.
actually is a sidewalk
Yeah.
that's not shown on the plan currently, correct?
Yeah, so
On
I
the
think the
corners?
city, I think we went out there and all the corners, you know, how we do the leads at the corners and
For
make that
ADA
ADA accessible with the bumpy material. So I think all the corners in this area have that. So there is a little bit on the corner here of some sidewalk, and then it just kind of ends. And I really do not like sidewalk gaps. They really do bother me. But I reached out to our engineer about this. He mentioned that they reviewed this area back when there were even less sidewalks, and they made a conscious decision to put the sidewalk on the west side of Burdett. I think that was part of the Nature's Remedy project, but I'm not entirely certain. But I think that was a pretty intentional decision. I think there's a lot of utilities and a little bit less right-of-way here on the east side. So like I said, that fire hydrant, I mean, it's smack dab in the middle of where you would put a sidewalk. Then all the power lines are actually on the east side of Burdett also. That being said, I would really like to, you know, if all these valets are coming from the south and walking back up, I think it'd be, you know, helpful, especially like in the winter or something, if that little portion of existing sidewalk along Drayton, if there's any way that can be extended and we can create some kind of accessible route into the building, I really would prefer if we had, you know, something. So that's kind of my recommendation.
That was part of my connectivity question, was where are the valleys going and how are they running through the street, right? So if you're parking at Paradigm to the south, you know, Joe's invested in that. We saw him here a couple years ago. He's invested in that building and the one that he owns next to it. We've got Nature's Remedy next door. Then I think we've got some more parking as we go toward Hilton. Like you've got the backside of Star Treks and whatnot on the other side. So thinking about the circulation and the safety for the valleys was actually, you totally read my mind. That was part of the question about where could sidewalks fit, how do they move around, and how do we keep them out of streets?
We'd be very open to what you recommend in a sense.
Okay.
And, see, we want the valley, we want everyone to be safe.
Yeah.
We want it to be very easy for them, and I think that makes sense.
But we'd be
Um,
happy to work with staff to make that all.
Kyle, just to clarify, so you said you spoke to the city engineer and they intentionally put in the sidewalks on Burdett, and that there are limitations to putting in sidewalks on the east side?
Yes, that's correct.
But did it say that it was like not possible?
I don't know if he said it was not possible, but I can reach out to him about that. Kind of double check and clarify that.
I think that'd be helpful to see what is actually possible.
Yeah, he sent me some plan from, say, like 2016, 2017, and it pretty much showed, you know, graphically, this is why we picked the west side as opposed to the east side.
Okay,
So-
and I didn't know if they just, you know, at that point, they had the ability to do it on one side, you know, due to the cost or whatnot, and just chose that as a preference, not just that they couldn't do both. So it would be helpful to clarify that.
Yeah, and so here's we can use technology here, right? So here's a nice view of the site. Yeah, so this, I would presume the city put this in. We do have a little bit of sidewalk here, but you can see this. There's some kind of water line here. I don't know exactly where it goes, and then you can see the power lines here. So it's a little bit trickier, but I can talk to the city engineer and get their information. What I was talking about was some kind of connection from, you know, this piece here towards the building itself. So just to be clear, you know, I think, I don't know if there's a good way from Hilton, but at least from Woodward Heights, which does have bicycle routes on it, there is an accessible route.
I think the Woodward Heights building parking is going to be, see where it says Boston Tea Room, you know, that big lot, right? So you're kind of cutting through your own site to get to that. So as, you know, Jason, as you lay out site circulation, think about how those valleys are running back and forth, because that's where Star Trek is, right? In the big red building? Aren't they back there?
No, so,
Oh, they're on the other side of
West.
Burdett.
On Walcott.
Yeah.
sorry.
I was also picturing that they're going to run through their own parking lot and then they're going to
Nope.
come back on the sidewalk.
No, because there's actually an 8-foot fence
Yes.
between
Yes.
Birmingham Chocolate and your lot. And my suggestion, as someone who ran a valet company 20 years
Oh, I see
ago,
his
yes,
contracts
do you
now.
believe this? I did. US Pro Parking. I would suggest having an agreement with the people at Birmingham Chocolate, and maybe even when you redo that site, create a fence that has a gate in it so that your valets can run right through.
That idea, we're speaking to the owner of that building.
Yeah.
As part of this, Star Treks was a natural force because they're going to provide parking, and they've got the space right there.
Yeah.
Are we clear?
Yeah, it's on the other side of Burdette, yep. But it's just a much longer haul for valet runners and, yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more, and hopefully that relationship will come to fruition. We'll have that
Yeah.
as well. That would be one for us because they've got a lot of
And then you have an opportunity to partner with Birmingham Chocolate for desserts at your events.
that is already in the works too.
And so in terms of safety and connectivity, you're wanting to add the additional curb cut. I think that was not allowed per ordinance. I don't know that part of our allowance that well, so I can't say it's not allowed, but I think that we prefer to not,
Like to decrease on that.
we like to decrease curb cuts rather than increase, especially since you already have the one to the north there. I know that will be used less frequently and more so for your distribution, but I think it'll also increase the areas of conflict along that road, and without the sidewalks. There's at least less pedestrian activity without the sidewalk, however, it, increases that conflict point. And it's really close to Drayton as well, so it's not great in terms of, I don't have any words right now, sorry.
Yeah, through the chair, that piece I'm still looking into. So when I first received the submittal, the driveway off the building was not shown. So I sort of thought it was being removed and they were trying to do a trade, so to speak. And, we'll get rid of this one, but we'll put in a different one. But it looks like they want both, right?
And just our thought process with that is by having that, we're going to use it as an exit only. So folks would enter off of Drayton, pull into that small parking lot on the south side of the building there. And that's where the entrance will be to go back into the building. And then our valet folks would pull out, go left, and go right back to, if they had to leave our lots, go back to the secondary lots, which would be south and west. It would be an exit only to limit traffic and left turns coming.
Through the chair, on that information, I actually am very opposed to that being an open driveway. However, I could consider if that was an enter only, because I think your conflict's going to be cars coming out and then going straight to an intersection. But if you're at a four-way stop and then the car goes straight and then they turn right away, then you have less of the conflict because you already see who's on the potential sidewalk if there's one there. The cars have already stopped. So that being an enter only, I feel like there's less conflict. If it's exit only, absolutely not. Because then you have cars coming out, veering in, you have four-way stop. I think that's going to be the problem, so.
I think you have the,
Go ahead.
where are you?
I was going to go to the map because I
Okay.
need a point.
Sure, as you do that, I was just going to say, but it also leads to the potential for backup at the four-way, even if it's enter only.
True. During a big event, it could back up into the intersection, good point.
Mr. Polika.
So you're going to get a backup either way. If you have valet coming in this way or coming in this way, you're going to get a backup either way. The advantage of having it this way is that the driver is on this side of the vehicle, so when valet comes in, they can jump right into the vehicle and take off, as opposed to having to come around the car to where the driver is and having to go around. So you're saving time by having traffic.
You done this before?
I never knew this about you.
What you said makes a ton of sense. You guys are up there.
It's fascinating.
It makes a ton sense.
And our access management guidelines are in section 24-226. It does require the 90-foot distance from a local street for our driveway spacing. So, and I think that's only like 25 feet, so it just kind of gives you the idea of.
Well, and on the topic of valet, I mean, another option, since you already have 2 curb cuts, what if you're coming in from the existing middle curb cut from Drayton, you drop off an individual, you would obviously need a sidewalk network to connect to the front door, but I think that's going to be expected anyways if we approve this kind of a project or not. And then the valet curves around your, we're going to call it storage building, because you said it's not possibly going to come to fruition, and then they come back out of that exit, so you really don't need any additional curb cuts, you just need to change the way you do your valet flow of the property.
South,
Valet coming in here,
right,
sidewalk connects to your main entrance, valet pulls around there and then back out. And then it still is picking up the valet on
Yeah.
the driver's side.
You could work it that way.
And then you may get a little conflict with traffic backing up. That's still something you need to be aware of. I mean, in the worst case scenario, if you know it's going to be a bigger trip, maybe move people back a little farther, but you can still utilize the existing in and out without.
The advantage of having it come in off of the west also is if you always push people to give directions coming off of Woodward Heights, coming down Burdette, then you have traffic that's stopped going south on Burdette to get into that driveway. And so as you come out of the southbound entrance or the southbound exit, they can either go left or right without interfering with traffic. Because like you say, if you come in that center drive and then you have cars going around, you're going to end up butting into oncoming traffic if they're coming from different directions.
So I instead of designing at the table, I think maybe the
We'll
takeaway.
figure those out tonight. We got
Call me later.
Absolutely not. The takeaway is we're very concerned about pedestrian traffic safety and circulation, especially in this area. And so if you come to us with a special land use application, we will probably want to see like a traffic plan and pedestrian plan. Thank you.
Yeah, and through the chair, I'd like to, be clear. I still have to kind of look through the ordinance with a fine-tooth comb and see if this is actually approvable or waiverable.
Of course.
You were spot on. I mean, there's already 3 curb cuts on the site. It's a big site, but it's not huge, So sometimes there's certain distance requirements. It has to be big enough to merit curb cuts, and it's absolutely our policy to reduce them rather than increase them in general. Of course, there are unique circumstances, but I'll have to look into this further.
Appreciate that. We understand that you haven't done a review as it's just a discussion item. Thank you for that. Any other, though, feedback in terms of the circulation of vehicles or pedestrians that we haven't covered? What would be helpful?
Yeah, definitely some sidewalk plan for the property itself. I mean, I know you're using the parking as existing, but I think if this is a special land use and we're trying to say that, is it actually a benefit, I would like to see an improvement from what it is, not exactly what it is.
Okay. So I actually did have a question going back to the use. This evening, in our email, it said that we were going from a 150-person capacity to 300. Is there any change in the floor plan?
Yeah, I can speak to
Okay,
that.
thanks.
So when I first got this, I think the initial plan was, if you look at the banquet hall portion of the space, we got the pre-function space, the banquet, and the mezzanine. I think the way it was originally pitched was you get a crowd of people, because the whole point of this conversation was to figure out occupancy, which gives us parking. So those are kind of our objectives. So it was explained to us that the group of people who are attending an event would occupy the banquet space, and the pre-function and the mezzanine would be spillover. So what we did was we treated it as if it was only that banquet space being utilized, which you take that space divided by, I think, 15 for assembly, that gets you 190 people. For the parking requirements, you divide that by 3, so that gave us like 64, I want to say. So that's how we treated the parking. This recent revision, I think the owner is looking for an occupancy of 300 for the banquet portion, which likely, fits in terms of occupancy. But it does raise the parking requirements accordingly. So there would be 100 people, or 100 spaces required for the banquet portion. And then we'd have, I calculated like 17 for the catering side, which is pretty in line with, I think, what he said earlier. There's certainly a lot more parking required than what is on site. So we can achieve that through parking agreements, which there are specific requirements for that. It has to be within, I think, 500 feet. The targets or the agreement, the other party has to have spaces to give too. I'm pleased that there's a plan, and I think we're going to move forward, and we do have to have our attorney look at it and all that fun stuff. But I just wanted to get a feel on the commission of how do we get from there to there in terms of the parking. A scenario that was kind of playing out in my head was, we had the total required parking, and then maybe we could subtract the daytime use with a parking reduction request, and that gives us a specific number, and then anything left over would go to the parking agreement. So I think we have some options of how we want to do this, but I just wanted to get the temperature on that. I mean, I haven't done any parking agreements since I've been here, so I don't know how common they are or how they've been utilized in the past. So I was looking for feedback on that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. So I would probably be open to looking at the evening parking requirements as a reduction of the daytime, or that is part of our general kind of review of parking requirements. So I think I would be open to that, but would not necessarily waive beyond that, and really looking at what would be the full capacity, and requiring that in our, a deeded parking requirement, I believe is what we typically do. And so we have done in the past, I think East 9, I want to call it 9 on 9, but it's not. On the west side, sorry.
Ferndale House?
That's the one. Ferndale House, I'm pretty sure they had we required a parking agreement with.
Oh, they're all over the place.
I think that was the last one, was probably, that I remember anyway.
That was the first one that came to mind for me, was the Ferndale Foods agreement.
Yeah.
Have we done, I don't know why, but I feel like in this area there's been a parking relationship somewhere, or maybe it's just another project that's come to the
It
table.
was one of
The
the
marijuana one?
What?
It was one of the pot shops.
Was it?
Yeah.
Because the only thing I guess I want to just kind of give as a heads up to you, Kyle, is just making sure that as you're checking the parking relationships, we're making sure that we're not agreeing to a relationship that's maybe already agreed with another project that got a parking variance. So then it's just kind of the same places. Yeah, go ahead, use my parking, and they've told 5 developments the same.
Now you've got a bride whose parents can't park.
Exactly. So just keep in mind for any project going forward that does it, but yeah.
Well, and I'm not exactly sure how we do it. We'll have to look into it, but I believe in communities that I worked in, it's actually like a deeded agreement. So it would be something that you could look at the entire agreement with the land, because if we're approving a special land use, it could go past owners. So we want to make sure that it stands with the use. And since this is a building that looks like you're putting a lot of work into, and looks like it's going to be a beautiful place, that if that remains open beyond, you managing the property, that we want to make sure that if it continues to be there, that we continue to have the parking.
Yeah, my ballpark guess is, 17 daytime, 117 total. So maybe the parking reduction request is that 17. And one of the criteria for the parking reduction request is differing daytime and evening uses. It's, in my opinion, I don't think they really meet any of the other ones of, proximity to transit or enhanced bicycle parking or mean, they're close to Hilton, frankly, and Woodward Heights, but they definitely meet the criteria for the differing uses. All said and done, I think ballpark, we're looking at like 40-ish that would need to be accounted for with the parking agreements.
I think we would probably have to be careful of that, knowing that we're looking at 300 person capacity, and that could mean quite a few cars coming on. And knowing that during our approval process, and knowing that there's not a lot of adjacent parking, there's no like on-street parking, we might be a little bit hesitant to reduce the parking from 117, or at least I might, just looking at looking at them again or listening to them, because knowing that there's limitations to, if you don't have the sites for the valet, then people are going to have to park somewhere and then walk. And so we know that there's, limitations for the pedestrian safety, et cetera, all that. So we would like to see all that. So just come to us with plenty of information, please, with that.
And through the chair too, I think, Kyle, this is an example also where, like, yes, usually in parking reductions, we say like, okay, are the bike lanes close by? It's great. I think knowing what the use is for it though, I think we can probably agree that most people will not consider riding a bike in a tux or a suit or a dress. So
You might have employees that do.
Maybe, but we're talking about evening though, and I think that kind of plays into.
I meant like waiters and servers and bartenders. Don't forget, you got those.
Oh, the staff too, yeah.
Yeah.
True, but, so I think that's just kind of something to keep in mind of the use of what the space is going to be, and then being realistic on what people would actually take as an alternative and not.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, and I think that speaks to one of the, primary differences between this and the previous concept is that I personally don't see this as a big community hangout spot. It's definitely a destination. It's probably going to be people from.
Hey, I want to have my wedding there. So it's not that it's not going to be local as well. It just seemed more like a destination.
Yeah.
And it does seem like you are already considering that you want parking spaces for your patrons. And look, I think he said that near Row there's 50 and Star Trek's there's 30. That's 80 spots right there. So it sounds like you're already trying to oversize your capacity. So I think that we would really appreciate that if possible.
And we are trying to oversize it. At 300 number is our safe number. Our model's going to be 250 and under, but we want to be safe for this planning, so we're over planning from a parking perspective. That's why we're going to have the public agreements to cover that.
Okay. And just for disclaimer, I'm not planning on getting married. That was completely a joke. Just joking. So,
Through the chair, on the topic of parking and weddings, one other question I'm going to ask is, where do you see a party bus or limo going on this property?
Good point.
Parking wise?
No, well, so party buses, limos are very common. So, like, how do you see it navigating this site? Where do you see it dropping off at? That kind of a thing.
And then waiting during the event to
Exactly.
take people back.
actually, can it go inside?
Or do you want the
Oh, that would be a good
yeah.
entrance. Enter right through the
That
space
middle.
and just pull right in.
could do that? Would be an interesting one.
Yeah, it would be unique.
I don't think the turning radius will allow you to, but go
That's
ahead.
true.
I think the way it's set up is if you entered the entrance to the left off of Drayton by the storage building, there's room for that party bus, unless it's a 50-footer, to make the turn and exit out of that eastern exit.
Okay.
And that space is, there's no parking over there either, because, yeah, I think it's going to be wide open right there. So that would be what we would, where that would go.
Okay, yeah, probably have that on the plan if you come with it, would be helpful too.
Through the chair, I also wanted to mention, in terms of the code requirements, it's a high occupancy, so it's very important for us to go through all the, fire and building and safety code. So even when we were looking at a lower occupancy, I think we still looked at a scenario in which it was extremely full. Like, what if, everybody possible showed up and it had a crazy occupancy? What would that look like? What would the fire requirements be? So that's the way our building and fire is going to look at it,
I will say, Kyle mentioned in his introduction that there are no use-specific review standards for the event planning or the special land use that this falls under. However, we do have review standards that are standard for any special land use. I believe Commissioner Baker had a question regarding one of them.
I had a question about hours of operation, and it might be slightly more of a comment, actually. 'Cause it sounds like actually a lot of us have worked in different aspects of event planning. So this is sort of fascinating to me. I'm learning about my colleagues so much. Yeah, it's fundraising events. So you mentioned the difference between daytime and evening. I think it's a great complement both to the function within the site and the function within the district. And we'll want to see your proposed hours of operation. That is something that gets regulated within the special land use. And before you take away your ability to have daytime events, particularly weekend daytime events, I want to make sure you guys think through like the weekend space, because that's a time it's pretty dead over there. So don't restrict yourself too much on the weekends. I think you may find that you've got parking capacity and your partners just aren't there. Like Paradigm Plumbing isn't necessarily hopping on the weekends, but all their vans might be parked there, right? Like, so I don't know exactly how vehicles, places like Paradigm that dispatch vehicles, I don't know how they get stored on the weekends. And but I want to make sure you've got the flexibility to do a weekend daytime event because it complements the district timing. It may just rearrange parking a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As of right now, we won't limit it, and we'll definitely take note of that and think it through.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe.
I don't know that you're going to have demand for daytime weekday, right? But your wedding, or I'm sorry, your weekend, you may just see different patterns emerge, both in how you use your shared parking and the demand for your space. So I wouldn't want you to restrict yourself unnecessarily. That was all on hours of operation. I guess one other question on the special land use standards, and this may go to impact of parking and traffic. Kyle, can we regulate, so the property owner talks about requiring valet, can that be required as part of a special land use? I know, see, that face that I went, oh, can we? So I'm just wondering if it can be a condition of a special land use or not. You don't need to know right now. But.
That I don't know. I
don't
will look
know
into
either.
that. I think ultimately the parking agreement, stipulates that it has to be within 500 feet, and then I think it kind of leaves it to that, and it seems people would be walking. So that's why I do think making sure we have an accessible route from wherever they're agreeing to is really important, whether or not it actually is valets. Even if we assume it is valets, just, we want to look at a worst case scenario.
Okay.
I think either way, it's the same number of pedestrian trips, and the safety of the valet versus anyone else that might be driving is important. So.
Just a general question. So there's an exterior stair being added on to the west facade. So it looks like it's exterior, not enclosed. So how would we review that as a building element? It has a fence around it. So is it part of technically like part of the facade? I'm not sure how it would look. What criteria?
I think yes and no. I think it's part of, in terms of the siting and the setbacks. I mean, this is a case where you can actually build into the build-to. So this is where the build-to is unusually kind of helpful for them, and that they can get a little bit closer to the lot line. If this had a traditional setback and they were trying to build into it, I think that would be a bit more problematic for them. But as far as I'm aware, they could construct that in terms of our schedule of regulations by right. I don't know if there's any discussion about materials, what that's going to look like. But I mean, to that bigger question, they're not proposing to do anything else to the facade. I think that would be the only major change. Anything else?
Just going back to the use, just in case plans change, before you come back, I want to make sure that you have, you know, as much useful information as you can, and I, of course, don't speak for everyone, but I personally really appreciate, again, the mixture of uses, and I know that we focused a lot on the particular catering or event space use, but the fact that half of the building is also then used for like the light industrial and the distribution and the packaging, and I think is really what allows us to be so open to the event space. And so you did talk that there was mention of, you know, potential like pizza delivery one, and that might not work. But I think in the future, I personally would think that we might be limited to the types of uses that would be in those spaces that would hopefully continue to be more in line with the industrial nature, or more in line with that versus the commercial. So I just wanted to, as you're thinking that through, please be aware that, again, that the nature of this site is within the industrial district, and the complementary mixture is what I think is, you know, allowing us to move more towards that like commercial and special land use that we've been discussing.
I agree. It makes it more attractive of a project, having the combination.
You've got a permitted use and something that's already outlined as an SLU, so that was easier for me to review, and I didn't feel like I was pushing too far into a rezoning or something that was a mismatch.
Right. Although there's, you know, clearly concerns, but certainly willing to work through them and look forward to seeing what we come back with. Hopefully, yeah, sorry.
I guess I do have another question.
Yeah, of course.
Just about like the larger storage and the smaller storage. So you're saying they're not used now, and they would be held vacant? So at what point, if you were starting to use them, either as storage, let's just say a storage or something, at what point will we need to review for those buildings? Maybe that's a question
Or is
for
the
you,
current
Kyle.
use storage, actually, and then,
Or are you coming in saying they're not going to be used at all, or you will keep using them as storage? Or,
Our intent right now, we don't have much.
just speak closer, sir.
Yeah, sorry, we don't have much to store in there right now. We're, if this comes to fruition, tables, chairs, things of that nature, we would utilize at least one of the buildings fairly quickly. But other than that, we don't have much to store in there right now, but we don't plan on changing that.
Projects, Mike.
Yeah, they have inquired about that.
I guess it's sort of a use question, like, are we considering the site plan with those used as storage, or are we considering them vacant, but it'll come back if they ever want to use it?
So in my initial review, I did evaluate them as storage.
Okay.
So yeah, they're part of the parking calculations. Okay. They will be. Storage has a very low parking requirement, so these two together, it's 2, maybe 3 spaces.
It could operate as shown. Okay. Thank you.
Good question, thank you. Anything else for the applicant? All right, well, thank you, gentlemen. We look forward to seeing you.
Thank you very much for the feedback. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
We've asked that too.
Next on our agenda, we have administrative items, specifically the consideration of approval of the 2023 meeting calendar. If you want to start with that, Kyle?
Yeah, so we've got the calendar up. We are obligated to do this at the end of every year. For all boards and commissions. So I've picked out the first and third Wednesdays at 6:30. I anticipate that we will not necessarily be meeting every single one of these. The way I envision this is the second meeting is probably the definite one, and the first one is more of like a flex. That's the way we've sort of been going unofficially, and I'm open to any thoughts or suggestions. I ran through, some of these are close to holidays, but none are on one. But I'm happy to take any feedback.
My first thought was the July 5th date was very close to a holiday. It is a Wednesday though, so I'm not, but with the holiday falling on a Tuesday, I'm not sure how many people will take that week off or just how difficult it is. I know the summer can be quite busy time too, so I'm not sure how others feel about leaving that date on or taking it off intentionally.
I think it would make sense to take it off.
I see a lot of
Take it off or replace it?
Oh, or moving it? Oh, that's a good point. Do you want to suggest moving the July 5th to maybe the second Wednesday
The
of the
12th.
month?
And there would be two of them.
Back to
in-
back.
I'm sure we'll have to look at the schedule, but do we want to?
I'm just asking the question, I don't know,
No.
we don't have to.
No, I think we would have to.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we'd have to ask staff to look at.
checks quorum. and whatnot.
So to either remove or move the July 5th meeting.
Okay.
That work? Any other dates?
Well, through the chair, I know you had just said that the first Wednesday is the one that could, be canceled or whatnot, and then the third is the one that we for sure do. Just from the quorum perspective, the third is always the one that I'm gonna have the most trouble getting to.
Oh.
The first is the one that I will always have a good chance of getting to. So keep that in mind. The third Wednesday is when I have board meetings, so those are always the ones that are gonna be the most difficult.
Okay, thanks. And so in practice, is that really what you're trying to do as staff, is to load up the second Wednesday, or is it really just as we have requests and the timing of our ability to get those to an
I mean,
agenda?
I'm open to whatever, frankly.
But in practice, has it worked like that this year? I guess?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that's pretty much what we've been doing. If we want to shift to doing more of an emphasis on the first of the month, it doesn't really make a big difference to me. It's just, I think we've traditionally had 2 dates. Sometimes it's useful for us to have 2 in a given month. And from my perspective, I think it's easier to cancel a meeting than it is to try to create a new one. So that's why I've created this schedule.
Personally, I think that it gives staff and developers more flexibility to not necessarily push for one or the other, the first or the third week. So that my preference would more so be to join a group of projects together for one meeting, but not too many. Well, that's not a really easy way to give direction, is it?
Through the chair, years ago, we used to only have the one meeting, and then as more development started coming in, we created the second meeting, and my understanding was it was created so like one meeting was more for the discussion items, and the second meeting was for the review and approval of items. Is that what we're trying to go for, or are we just gonna, if a developer can make it the first meeting, for approval, or like tonight we had one of each?
Commissioner Hosky, didn't you?
I think we should just take agenda items
As they come?
as they come. I like the idea of doing it twice a month. I think while public meetings happen on a monthly basis, that's not typically the pace of business. And so if there are items that can't be addressed administratively, I think the quicker that we can have folks assembled to be able to address concerns so that they can continue moving forward with financing and all the other things that go along with development. I mean, these are pretty critical conversations to their ability to move forward with the development.
I agree. Didn't you have like a subcommittee or something to review this as a past year?
Yeah, I think it was, yes, it was, and I don't know, is that
You had a final
any
recommendation?
strong recommendations? I think I'd have to find my notes, because that was like a whole baby ago.
Good
But
question.
there was, from the outgoing staff, some great feedback that I wrote down somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah,
So how's that for some feedback, Kyle?
I think in terms of discussions, I mean, we had a lot earlier in the year when I first started. And I sort of got the impression, and maybe even the comments, that we were getting a little too crazy with discussions. So, I mean, the one tonight, I urged them to do it because I didn't want all these things to just be thrown at you all for final approval while things were still up in the air. But I think personally, staff has gotten better at kind of guiding people to, okay, you don't really need discussion for this. Just, you know, you're going to be okay. So we've been better at having those conversations. So I don't anticipate a lot of discussions necessarily, but I do agree with Commissioner Hoskew. I think the flexibility is helpful to have 2 meetings.
Oh, it was actually the end of last year, Brittany. Yes, I agree in the flexibility. I would just say that if there's only a couple agenda items and one does have the flexibility to have 1 meeting for the month if possible versus the 2, but so any other dates? So the January 4th is also would potentially be our next meeting.
Are we not meeting in December?
Well, so I guess, yeah, so that's another conversation. So, I don't know if we want to have that now, or if we want to leave the January 4th as an option.
We could leave that on there. I don't, at this time, I do not anticipate any items at that meeting.
Refresh my memory. City Hall is closed, well, this year it'll be closed on Monday. Is it Friday and Monday for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day? Because they both fall on the weekend. You have New Year's Eve on a Saturday, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve on a Saturday, and Christmas Day and New Year's Day on a Sunday.
Yeah, we're going to be closed Friday and Monday.
Okay. So really, you're only going to be open 2 or 3 days between Christmas and New Year's. And most of those people are going to take a vacation. So I wouldn't expect you to get a lot of business for the 4th.
All right, so we can leave it on the schedule, knowing, is that what you're saying? But knowing that we probably won't meet? Everyone okay with that? Okay, so another, so I actually did just pull up Brittany's email, and she had received staff feedback, and I think there's a point in here that is a good point that maybe we should discuss now. It's suggested that we have 2 to 3 annual workshops, and so for the times where we actually don't have business to attend to use maybe that time for discussing items like zoning ordinance amendments or different items that we might just want to have a discussion as a commission, which I really like that idea, especially as, and I think Kyle's going to mention, that we will be looking at putting out an RFP for our zoning ordinance update coming up fairly quickly here. And so over the next year, really digging into our zoning ordinance, which I think these workshops will be helpful. So if everyone would be okay with, you know, if we are comfortable having 2 meetings a month, but we don't actually have agenda items, maybe using that time for like a workshop of sorts.
I like that.
Any opposed? Okay.
Whoever wrote that email is really smart. No recollection.
We're baby mode.
Oh my God. When Mike said that, I was like, wait a minute.
I like that idea a lot better than when we have those conversations at like the very end of the meeting and
Exactly.
the administrative, I'm just like,
Yeah. No.
Oh, you want me to think now?
But it's of course always like important information.
It is, of course.
So apologies if it's my fault, but
competing
yes.
wolves, right?
So I think it's a really great that we can like parking lot something and say, well, let's work on that at the next workshop.
And I think as we have some of those conversations, it can provide additional clarity for staff so that some of these questions can be addressed administratively and don't necessarily come back as projects have to come for discussion.
Sure.
Good point. Yeah. For instance, the open space requirements.
Exactly. I mean, those are real conversations, but I think when there's clear consistency, staff's going to be better empowered to
Agreed. Any more feedback you want on the schedule for this 2023 year going? Any other comments on that? So speaking of, I brought up the zoning ordinance. Do you want to provide any updates you have?
Do we need to
I don't
act
wanna-
on this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we need to act on that?
To act on it?
Yeah, preferably if we can.
I would move that we approve the planning commission calendar for 2023 with the proposed change to the July 5th meeting, potentially moving it to the second Wednesday.
Move or cancel?
12th.
The 12th, oh, if I could do math. The 12th.
Does it matter the day of week? Oh, sorry, yes. Support by Isaac. So discussion. So the 12th would be a Wednesday. Does anyone oppose to moving into like a Tuesday or Thursday if need be?
Definitely not Tuesday.
I would prefer to keep it Wednesday.
Keep it Wednesday is the,
Okay.
so the 5th or the 12th or neither? Is that correct?
5th or the 12th, or we wait till the 19th? Yeah, for
Yep.
July, right?
Thank you for clarifying.
But ideally not the 5th, right? So we're saying the 12th or the 19th?
Correct.
The 12th or nothing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or for that update.
Move it to the 12th. Okay. So our July dates would be July 12 and July 19, 2023. Yes, is that what I said?
12th and 19th.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I meant to say, if that's not what I said.
Yeah. All those in support?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Do we
opposed?
need a second for that?
Krista, second.
Oh, sorry.
Any opposed? All right, there you go.
On the calendar right now?
And I'm realizing you might not have wanted to update this on the zoning ordinance, but if you do have anything,
Yeah, so we're putting out the feelers right now. We're kind of in like the backstage memo drafting to council part of the process. But I would expect in 2023 we will be looking at a pretty large review and overhaul of our zoning ordinance. So I will keep you all apprised of that and give you more information as we get it.
that means / rewrite? Complete?
Yes.
Thank you. And then speaking of our next meeting, so as of now, we don't have any agenda items for the second meeting of this month? Is that
That's correct.
And so typically in the month of January, we vote for officers. So potentially at our next meeting, we will be voting for officers. So I just want everyone to consider that before our next meeting.
Right now, we don't think we're meeting at all in December.
This is correct.
This is December. This is December. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's the 7th of this. We've been a week into December.
I told you how much time I'm spending with middle schoolers right now. Thank you. All right, so we don't think next meeting.
Any other administrative items? Any other commission items? Or, sorry, moving on to commission items, any?
Just for me, that if we do have a December 20th meeting, I will not be here, and I won't be calling in because I'll be in New York.
Next year?
Oh, the 20th.
21st?
Or the 21st? No, I thought this year was the 21st, right?
21st.
21st.
Oh, the 21st, sorry, yeah.
Still, if you'll be there on the 20th.
I'll be there on the 20th and the 21st. And I will be in the theater, so no, I'm not calling in.
Very nice. I don't think we can call in, though.
Right, I was like, is that an option?
He was
No, I was
texting us.
watching on YouTube. And then texting Kate.
He was homesick, but he was still
Live
watching.
tweeting.
Anyone else would be a planned absence if we did have a meeting on the 21st?
I'll be here.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. All right, well, with that, it sounds like we need to adjourn at 8:19 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.